Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Shelf Life. This is Simran, your best friend, and this is my podcast, Shelf Life, where we talk about books, their philosophies, but most importantly, our personal relationship with the book. And it has been a while. A lot has been happening in life. I think a lot is always happening in life, but we just don't recognize it. Or there's usually stuff that's happening in life that we really don't want to happen. But, you know, who controls these things anyway? So, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff. I did another open mic, which, this is a first for me. I've never done so many open mics so close together. The last time that happened um, was just before Corona hit. So yeah, this is bringing back good memories. Um, I went to another open mic and I performed my poem in front of quite a few people and they liked it. And what was really interesting about this place was that the venue was actually really small. It was a cafe. It was a very compact place. So the stage was right in front of the people. Like it was at an arm's length, honestly speaking. So I could really look into the eyes of everyone I was talking to, and I could really feel them make certain sounds. You know how people make sounds. I don't know if there's any artists listening to this, but especially poets, when you're on stage, you can hear sounds, okay? And honestly speaking, that's usually the only things that you can notice. You hear people's sounds, you hear the way their voice moves in that room. You also sometimes can spot their eyes, and you can tell by their eyes if they like what you're saying, but that doesn't happen very often. In fact, a lot of venues have really dim lighting, so you really can't see anybody, which I personally hate. I think poetry should be performed in a room full of people that you can touch and see and hear and feel. Poetry is something that you feel with people, it's something that we experience together. I don't think anybody wrote poetry just for themselves. I don't think poetry is meant to be confined to the blackness of the night. It can't. It has to soar. These are all really fancy lines for someone who's basically just trying to say, cut the lights, man. Um, so, yeah, it was a very compact room, well lit. Um, I could hear sounds that people were making. So, when someone really likes a line from the poem, they have this thing that they do with their mouth. I know how this sounds. Okay, this is sounding really dirty, but you can tell basically when someone really likes a poem, and when it touches a nerve, and when it hits somewhere that they didn't think it would, but it did. You can tell, and it's a very beautiful feeling. I think I live for that moment. I love when something I've written, something I've experienced, is experienced at least in part by someone else. I think that's what most poets want. That's what most poets are looking for. They're looking for companionship, they're looking for a shared experience. In sociology, a shared experience is the basis for really nations being formed. They say that a country, a nation, a people is birthed when individuals come together and have a shared experience, or come together upon having a shared experience. They say that it's not even language or, um, you know, race or color or caste that binds us. It is actually just experiences. Pretty instrumental, I would say. Yeah, This has been a really interesting start to the episode. We've just, started right into the conversation. And I was actually thinking about what today's episode would be like, and I wanted to do a book, but honestly, I've just been really busy reading. I've been reading more, and I'm in the process of reading more. So I don't think I have any books right now that I want to talk about because I want to sit and really read what I'm reading, and I want to give myself enough time to form my thoughts and absorb everything that that art is trying to convey to me. So I want to give it a little bit of time. I was thinking of doing an interview this week, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. And yeah, I thought, what can we do this week? And it's a great opportunity to fill silences with poems. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to fill silences with poetry. And I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to actually title this, I'm going to put it under a new category. I'm starting a new category on Shelf Life. It is called, not the Poetry Project, it's called Reading Poetry with Simran. Yeah, it's going to be called Reading Poetry with Simran. And I'm gonna suggest, I'm gonna encourage you, in fact, to listen to these episodes probably late at night or when you've probably just come back from work, which would mean your living room. But when you've just finished work and you're really tired and there's not really much to eat at home, so you just grab that packet of chips or the packet of bread or whatever it is that's there at home, and you lie down on the couch and you're just probably scrolling through YouTube, trying to figure out what to watch, what you can fill your time with. But I'm gonna encourage you to fill your time with something that will feed your soul. And that is always poetry. I don't know how it could be anything else. And by that I mean all music and all art and everything. Every piece of art is poetry, okay? I mean that. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about poetry today. Okay? And I want to start this conversation with the one and only. There's really no one like him. It's none other than Kahlil Gibran. What do we even say about Kahlil Gibran? He is just the best that there ever was. I honestly feel like Kahlil Gibran was the first ever spoken word poet. I know that just sounds very strange, but I want to believe that he was. He wrote poetry that I feel um, had no rigidity. It had no structure that it wanted to fit into. It had nothing it was trying to assimilate into. It was just poetry written straight from the heart. That's what I think Gibran's poetry is. He writes really simple words. I usually recommend his collection to someone who's just starting out in this field and who feels really uh, betrayed by sonnets and 14th century medieval English. I usually ask them to read Gibran first because his words are really simple and they sit on your mind and they sit on your tongue like I don't know, like your favorite choice of tea, probably. So yeah, he's very easy to digest, but what he says reveals himself in the most truthful manner possible. Gibran opens his wounds on pieces of paper and he lays everything bare. I'm gonna read a poem called what is it called? I mean, it's called, I think it's one of the poems in the Prophet, which is his most famous work. And I'm going to read it out to you. I'm going to read a little bit of it right now. Okay? It's a pretty long poem, but I'm going to read it right now. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires: to melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody into the night, to know the pain of too much tenderness, to be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully, to wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving, to rest at the noon hour and meditate on love's ecstasy, to return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise on your lips. Such simple words, such a simple thing that he's trying to convey. You might almost, think that this was a poem, in a children's book or like elementary school syllabus, but it's really not. It's a very timeless poem talking about very apt things like gratitude and the simplicity of love. And I think this poem represents a shade of yellow to me for some reason. It feels like a calm summer morning, probably somewhere up north in India, where it's not too violent, it doesn't slap your face, but it's just calm. It feels familiar, it feels like comfort. So yeah, I feel like that's what this poem reminds me of. And Kahlil Gibran was quite something, He was for those who don't know, he was born in Lebanon, and he was a Lebanese American poet who wrote really wonderful words and lived a really rich and whole and full life. Um, One of his famous poems, actually, one of his famous quotes, um, is that thing about, how you should live a good life and tell no one. Um, you know, See beautiful things and tell no one, meet beautiful people and tell no one, kiss a lot of people and tell no one, because people ruin beautiful things. I'm paraphrasing right now because I've just butchered it, but that was the initial feel of it. That was Khalil Gibran for you, everybody, and I hope that you like that. Speaking about love, we just talked about sonnets and how people feel betrayed by sonnets and medieval English, but another poem that I really, really like and that has been running on my mind lately, especially for the last couple of years. A friend of mine actually really loved Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and she still does, and talks about this poem a lot. Um, and that's when you know, I harkened back to it, and I remembered how beautiful it is and how beautifully apt it is. I want to just, go back to it again. It's a poem called "How Do I Love Thee." It's not a poem; it's a sonnet called "How Do I Love Thee" by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She writes, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight. For the ends of being and ideal grace, I love thee to the level of everyday's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with the love I seemed to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears, and of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. Such a beautiful little sonnet. And again, such simple expression of love. I fail. Words fail right now when I read stuff like this. And in fact, if you didn't know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, she dealt with a lot in her life. I mean, health wise, she had a lot of issues. Uh, she was one of 12 children, in fact, and began writing poetry at a very young age, but at I think she was around 15 or 16 that she became really ill, and she suffered from a lot of problems and a lot of um, you know just a lot of issues health wise, but she kept writing poetry and she kept um, going about it, and then she met another writer whose name was Robert Browning, and both of them were writers and they wrote all their lives, and they had a correspondence, a courtship, and were married. And even though they were married in secret because Elizabeth's father would disapprove of Robert, theirs was a love that was very, very enduring. Enduring is the word for it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to say lasting, I want to say enduring. They endured a lot together, and I think that's what love probably is, right? When two people uh, face life's frivolities and obnoxiousness together. That's what you do in love. That's what you do when you find someone whom your soul loves, as they say in the Bible. I have found the one whom my soul loves. I forget which book that is from the Bible, but that is a very beautiful line that I always go back to. So yeah, they endured a lot together and had a pretty crazy life. But that was How Do I Love Thee, Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. It's very interesting the way we define love as well. I think recently I came across a poem where, again, it was extremely dark. I just want to say, I mean, we were talking about really fun poems right now and really cute and simple and joyful poems, but I'm gonna really deep dive into extremely dark poems. Just giving a heads up right now. Um, but I was thinking about how we express love and how it's usually always joyful. And sometimes love doesn't have to be joyful, sometimes it is extremely distressing and perhaps frustrating and perhaps even toxic. But love is interesting. And the next poem that I have is by Tina Chang. The poem is called Love, but the content is a little bit funny. Okay, here it goes. I am haunted by how much our mothers do not know. How a republic falls because of its backhanded deals, stairwell secrets. My mother does not know I am lying with a man who is darker than me, that we do not have names for how we truly treat our bodies, what we do with them. The other possesses me. Without him, the perception of me fails to exist. My mother now is taking her shears and cutting them through live shrimp. When I was a child, she peeled each flushed grape only until only the pale, fleshy bead remained. She placed them onto a plate in one shining mound, deseeded, in front of me. How I sucked and bled the fruit of all their juice, hypnotized in front of the buzz of the television in each version of my childhood. I am her daughter. This is certain. I am lying down with a man who is darker than me, and maybe this poem is my real republic. My face is my face, or is it stolen from my mother and hung over mine? If I were a dream, You could say my countenance was a string of flickering lights, made of teeth, or an expression unraveling like a carpet into a narrow river of another life. Does truth matter when it's floating face up or face down? The answer to this makes all the difference. Pretty crazy poem, right? Yeah, I thought so too. It's funny how writers just have this ability to weave emotions together, however painful and even sometimes empty they might be. It's really insane. Like, this writer writes about so many things, about how bodies don't have a name, how her mother's face is probably just another picture on hers. Her face is just another replica of her mom's, and there's so much that she's talking about, and you don't know where this comes from, except that you do, because you feel it too. And you feel it because the writer wove that emotion into your soul just as you heard it right now. It's very interesting. I think it's something to think about that usually we don't, because for whatever reason, but it's very interesting. Another poet who does this is Olivia Gatwood. I might have talked about her a lot because I just love Olivia Gatwood. Um, but she had a book out. It's called Life of a Party or something like that. Life of the Party. Um, it's a collection of poetry, and she's a spoken word poet. She's very young. She's American and very, very interesting to hear. I mean, I love her poems, and I think you will too. But she has a poem that really made me think of how writers write and how do they engage with these emotions that are so gray and so painful at times and so distressing and dysfunctional and just they don't give you peace. But how do you engage with this? So she has a poem and she writes, "What are you afraid of?" He asks. "Why are you so afraid?" I don't know why I'm doing this, playing show and tell with the times I've walked fast in the dark. Maybe I see myself in the worst of it. Maybe if I can imagine myself in the shallow water, you should too. Maybe I'm tired of hearing people talk about the murder of girls like it is both beautiful and out of the ordinary. I ask the hotel attendant to put me in a room near the elevator. I listen to my best friend breathe on the line while she walks home. Sometimes I search, quote, woman's body found in, unquote, when I visit a new city. Then I learn her name, her age, where they found her. Under a baseboard, limbs folded into a closet, I learn her hobbies. That she loved to sing. I watched the security footage they discovered of her last moments. I watch her move and breathe like the rest of us. I watch her look over her shoulder 3 times before walking out of view. This poem, as you might have guessed, is about how Olivia is just so tired of all these reports of, you know, beautiful woman just got murdered and beautiful woman got raped and woman walking alone at 12 in the night has been abducted and blah blah blah. And it's sickening and dangerous and ruins my sense of autonomy and peace and my conception of myself. But to maneuver those feelings and to put them on a piece of paper is brave. It's a brave thing to do, and I don't know how people do it. I don't know how poets do it. I don't know if I'm good at it. I don't think I am. I try to, In fact, one of the most important things that I'm trying right now is to engage with uncomfortable feelings and to possibly put them on a piece of paper and see where it takes me. But I don't know if I'm good at it. I really am not, but I'm trying. In fact, another really important poem that it beats me, but I don't remember for some reason who this is by. It really bothers me, and if you do, please let me know. But it bothers me that I don't know whom this is by. And it engages with the reality of death, right? And I'm just gonna read out right now. Rise up. Why mourn this transient world of men? Pass your whole life in gratitude and joy. Had mankind been freed from womb and tomb, when would come our chance to live and love? Allow no shadow of regret to cloud you, no absurd grief to overcast your days. Never renounce love songs or lawns or kisses until your clay lies mixed with elder clay. I don't know who wrote this. This is very annoying. Man, it's so annoying. I cannot find who wrote that poem, and I wish I did, but I don't. No, and yeah, it bothers me a lot. But that was that, and I think again it engages with the thought of death, and that's something I would never engage in poetry. But it's interesting how people do it, how people talk about painful things. I hope you're doing that as well. I hope you do that, maybe not through poetry, but I hope you engage with your feelings through, I don't know, through prayer, through conversation with a lover, with a friend, with a parent, with a stranger. I hope you're engaging. I hope you're always engaged in the world. I don't understand this concept of detachment. I don't know how it is possible. I don't know why people do it. Perhaps it serves a greater purpose for the enlightenment of the soul. But what really is enlightenment if you do not concern yourself with life, with the reality of life, with the reality of emotion? I want to read a little poem that I wrote quite a while back. And I'd written it for a friend, but honestly, I'd written it for myself. I'd written it for, uh, you know, just a version of myself that was probably confused, probably figuring stuff out. And I didn't name it. I didn't name it anything. I just wrote it down. Sunsets are a deep, dark enigma in the world of you and I. Cigarettes sit between our lips like a barricade. The outside world is just smoke, greasy, grey, light. Inside you, there are poems no one knows the structure to. They root in your corners, bright violet, indigo, and auburn, colors we love yet have never seen. Those of us who are weak say, auburn is the color of the sunset. But you, you are not like the rest of us. For you, every breath is a world in itself. For you, auburn is your brave little heart singing you a lullaby. For you, a rogue strand of hair is reason to stand in the rain and dance. For you, every moonrise, every night sky, every sentence rhymed into a poem is a reason to love and be loved. Sunsets are diving in dark blue ocean, cigarettes, Pink Floyd, and a little bit of prayer intact. Blood orange skies for you to come renewed. To live, to love, to dance, to sing, to die. So you dive right into the deep, dark sunset of fear. Auburn burns in your silent brown eyes. You dive. Those of us who are weak stand on the promontory, watching you soar. That's been the one of the most, one of the poems that I really love. One of the poems I wrote that I really love. I know that sounds pretty vain, but that was a pretty good poem. I come back to it quite often, I feel. I Because it was written from a place of pure love. It was written from a place of pure devotion um, and feeling every moment so deeply that you had to record it, that you had to remember it in some way, and not record it, by clicking a picture or by writing it down, penning down the time or something like that, but recording it in the way that it presented to you as art, recording it as art. So yeah, that was a poem that I wrote quite a while back, probably February 2020, and it just really sat with me. So yeah, that's been some of the poems that I felt like I could discuss this week. We could definitely discuss more, and this could really be like a weekly thing maybe, or I don't know, a monthly thing where it's just it's a poetry episode. You read poetry with me. You could possibly talk about your favorite poems and let me know. I always like to hear about poems that have impacted people's lives. It's really important to me to know, how and why people like certain poems. So you can always let me know that, and I will let you know about other poems that I've been reading. I've been in the process of reading 2 books. I'm reading Adichie's Half of a Yellow Sun, yes, and I'm also reading The Heart Asks Pleasure First by Karuna Izara Parik. Wow, I really messed up saying that name. But yeah, these are the 2 books I've been reading, and you can expect an episode sometime soon. If not, we will continue to read poetry and continue to love life. That reminds me of a quote by, what's his name? Wow, I just forgot Hemingway's name. Yeah, that reminds me of a quote by Hemingway. He said, we ate well and cheaply, and drank well and cheaply, and slept well and warmed together and loved each other. I don't know, I really love that poem. I feel like that represents a night of great fun and a great dinner with your best friends, probably. That's how I remember it. I feel like that quote keeps harkening back to probably a dinner that I must have had with a group of close friends. So yeah, that's been this episode. I hope you liked it. I hope it wasn't too random. Let me know if you like this format. I will see you very soon. I mean, you will hear me very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a really, really blessed week. Thank you.